Robert Duvall walked out of a Hollywood meeting in 1995 without saying goodbye, but stopped at the front desk on his way out and said something to the receptionist that nobody in that building ever forgot. What he did next cost him a film deal and gave someone else everything. It was a Thursday afternoon in March 1995, and the conference room on the third floor of Meridian Pictures on Wilshire Boulevard had been occupied for 47 minutes by a meeting that had been scheduled for 30. This was not unusual for Meridian Pictures, which operated on the specific Hollywood principle that the most important signal of a meeting's significance is how long it runs past its scheduled end, regardless of whether the additional time produces anything useful. The meeting had been called to discuss the terms of Robert Duvall's attachment to a project called The Honest Man, a drama about a small-town judge in rural Mississippi who is asked to preside over a case that threatens to expose decisions he made 20 years earlier. Duvall had read the script on a flight from New York to Los Angeles and had called his agent from the gate before he'd even collected his bag. The script was the kind of script he had been looking for without knowing he was looking for it, quiet in its construction, unsparing in its honesty, and built around a character whose moral complexity could not be resolved by the end of the second act, which was, in Duvall's experience, the surest sign that a writer had told the truth. A drama about a small-town judge navigating a case that threatened to expose his own past. The script was good. Duvall had read it twice and agreed to both readings. He had come to the meeting prepared to discuss the project seriously and had arrived, as he always arrived, on time. The man on the other side of the table was the studio's head of production, a 58-year-old named Gerald Marsh, who had been in the industry long enough to have strong opinions about everything and the seniority to express them without filtering. He was not, by the account of people who worked with him, a cruel man. He was a man who had spent 30 years in a business that rewards a certain kind of confidence, and who had developed that confidence to a degree that had become, in certain rooms, indistinguishable from contempt. The first 20 minutes of the meeting were productive. The next 27 were not. It began when Marsh made a comment about the script's second act that Duvall disagreed with, a structural suggestion that would have resolved the film's central ambiguity in the first hour rather than carrying it through to the end. Duvall said, plainly and without heat, that he thought the ambiguity was the point. Marsh said, with the particular patience of a man who considers patience a form of condescension, that the ambiguity was what the test audiences had found most frustrating. Duvall said that he thought test audiences were a useful tool for identifying problems with clarity and a poor tool for identifying problems with courage. The room went quiet in a specific way, not the silence of disagreement which has a charge to it, but the silence of people recalibrating, adjusting their understanding of what kind of meeting this had now become. The two junior executives on Marsh's side of the table looked at their notepads. The assistant in the corner kept writing. Gerald Marsh looked at Duvall with the expression of a man who has just been told something he did not expect and is deciding how to process it. What followed was 27 minutes of Gerald Marsh explaining, in various formulations and with decreasing subtlety, why the opinion of a man who had won 2 Academy Awards was less relevant to the commercial prospects of a film than the opinions of the focus groups that Meridian used to evaluate its projects. He did not say this in those exact words. He did not need to. The formulations he used were the formulations that experienced studio executives develop for communicating hierarchy without stating it directly. And Duvall, who had been in rooms like this one for 40 years and had developed a correspondingly accurate ear for what was actually being said, heard all of it. He listened for 27 minutes. He did this with the quality of attention he brought to everything, complete, unhurried, and entirely without the performance of patience that people put on when they are waiting for their turn to respond. He was not waiting for his turn. He was listening because he had decided, somewhere around minute 8 of the 27, that what was being communicated in this room was not something that could be resolved by more conversation, and that the appropriate response was to finish receiving the information and then act on it. Then he stood up. He did not raise his voice. He did not make a speech. He did not say the things that the situation might have licensed him to say about his record, about his judgment, about the comparative merits of his opinions, versus the opinions of people in shopping mall screening rooms who had been given free popcorn to watch an unfinished film. He buttoned his jacket, which was the gesture of a man who has made a decision and is executing it, and he said to Gerald Marsh, in the even, unhurried tone he used for things he meant completely, "I don't think this is the right project for me." He shook Marsh's hand, the handshake of a man completing a transaction that is now finished, firm and brief, and entirely without residual feeling. Marsh received it in the way men receive handshakes in rooms where they have just lost something, which is to say with more grip than the moment requires. He nodded to the two junior executives at the table, both of whom had the expressions of people watching something they will be describing for years. Then he walked out. The assistant, who had been sitting in the corner of the conference room for the entire meeting, taking notes on a legal pad in the careful, efficient way of someone who has learned that the value of a meeting assistant is in direct proportion to the quality of her notes, looked up when Duvall stood. Her name was Patricia Voss. She was 29 years old, had been working at Meridian for 3 years as an assistant to Gerald Marsh, and had spent those 3 years in the specific position of someone who is good enough at her job that everyone notices the quality of her work, and nobody considers what that quality suggests about her potential. She had been in rooms like this one many times over 3 years. She knew Gerald Marsh's rhythm in a meeting, when he was genuinely interested in what was being said, and when he had already decided and was using the meeting to communicate the decision through other means. She had known, about 15 minutes in, that this meeting was the second kind. She'd kept writing notes because her job was to write notes, and because the notes were good regardless of what the meeting produced, and because she had learned early that the quality of your work in a room where things are going badly is one of the few things you can control. She had watched the 47 minutes of the meeting with the contained, professionally neutral attention that her position required. She had noted Duvall's arguments. She had noted Marsh's responses. She had noted, with the peripheral precision that good assistants develop, the moment when the meeting shifted from a negotiation to something else. She had said nothing, because saying nothing was her job. Duvall paused at the door. He looked at Patricia Voss in the corner with her legal pad. "You've been the most useful person in this room for the last 47 minutes, he said. Patricia looked at him. "How many of these meetings do you run the notes for in a week?" he asked. She considered the question. 4 or 5, she said. "Sometimes more." He nodded. "You understand the projects better than anyone at that table," he said, "probably including me." He paused. "Someone should be paying you to have opinions instead of just recording everyone else's." He walked out. The room was quiet. Gerald Marsh looked at the door through which Robert Duvall had just exited his building, his meeting, and his film deal, and then looked at Patricia Voss in the corner, and then looked at his 2 junior executives who were looking at their notepads. He said nothing. Patricia Voss finished writing the last line of her meeting notes. She finished it even now, even after what had just happened, because the note was not finished, and she finished what she started, capped her pen, straightened her legal pad, and walked back to her desk. She passed Gerald Marsh's closed office door without stopping. She sat down at her desk. She looked at her computer screen for a moment without seeing it. Then she opened a new document and began transcribing the notes from the meeting. She thought about what Duvall had said for the rest of that afternoon. She thought about it on the drive home, and over dinner, and at some point in the middle of the night when she woke up and lay in the dark and had the particular quality of thought that the middle of the night makes available. She'd been thinking for some time about leaving Meridian, not because the job was bad, and not because Gerald Marsh was worse than most people she could work for in this industry, but because she had understood with increasing clarity over 3 years that the ceiling of what she could become in her current position was not a ceiling she was willing to accept. She had been unable to act on this understanding for reasons that were practical and real: the stability of the job, the relationships she had built, the specific anxiety of leaving a known place for an unknown one. Duvall had not told her anything she didn't already know. He had not given her information she lacked or advice she hadn't already arrived at through 3 years of careful, frustrated observation of a room she had outgrown. He had not identified a problem she hadn't already identified. he had told her that someone else could see it too. And he had said it on his way out of a deal, a significant deal, a project he had genuinely wanted, without hesitating, without calculating what the gesture cost him, without any apparent awareness that it was a gesture at all. He had said it because it was true and because it needed to be said, and those had apparently been sufficient reasons. 3 months after the meeting, Patricia Voss sent her resignation letter to Gerald Marsh on a Monday morning and accepted a position as a development executive at a smaller production company on the east side of Los Angeles. The company was younger and less established than Meridian, its projects were less certain, and the salary was $11,000 a year less than what she had been making. She took the position without hesitation and was in her new office by the following Wednesday. Gerald Marsh, when he received the resignation letter, called her into his office and asked if there was anything Meridian could do to keep her. Patricia told him there wasn't. He told her he was sorry to lose her. She thanked him and meant it. She started her new job on a Thursday at a smaller production company on the east side. It was a step down in salary and a significant step up in responsibility. She took it without hesitation, which surprised the people who knew her, and did not surprise the people who had watched her in meetings for 3 years. She has been running her own production company for the past 14 years. In that time, she has developed and produced 11 features, 3 of which were Oscar-nominated and 1 of which won. She has a reputation in the industry for the specific quality that she identified on that Thursday afternoon at her desk as the thing she had been waiting to be given room to exercise. She has opinions, and she is right about them more often than she is wrong, and she has built a company around the principle that the opinion of the person in the room who actually understands the material is more valuable than the opinion of a focus group that was given free popcorn. In a 2018 panel on women in film production, she was asked about the moment that clarified her path. She told the story of the 47-minute meeting, of the man who walked out and stopped at the door, and of the question he had asked on his way out of a deal he had already decided wasn't worth making. "He didn't give me advice," she said. "He didn't tell me what to do. He asked me one question, and it was the question that made visible what I already knew." She paused. That's a specific kind of generosity. Most people don't have it. She paused again, in the way of someone who has thought about this particular thing for a long time. He walked out of a deal he wanted, on a project he believed in, and on his way out, he stopped to tell a woman in the corner that she was the most useful person in the room. He didn't need to do that. It cost him nothing to not do it. He did it because it was true, and he thought it should be said. She looked at the interviewer. That's pure Duvall. That's just who he is. The interviewer asked if she had ever thanked him. Patricia Voss smiled. "I run a production company," she said. "That's the thanks." The honest man was never made. Gerald Marsh left Meridian 2 years later under circumstances that were described in the trades as a mutual decision. The script was optioned twice more over the following decade and never reached production. Patricia Voss has the meeting notes from that Thursday afternoon in a file in her office. She's kept every set of meeting notes from every meeting she attended at Meridian, a professional habit she developed in her first year and has never broken. The notes from the 47-minute meeting are not marked or annotated differently from any of the others. She knows which ones they are. If this story reminded you that the most powerful thing anyone can do for another person is see them clearly and say so, subscribe, leave a comment, and hit the notification bell. More stories about what it really means to be Robert Duvall in the moments that never made the trades are coming every single week.